My name is Michael Scott. I'm a historian and an avid student of the Roman Empire. One of its greatest legacies is now one of the world's great religions, Christianity. For Christians, the essential event in the foundation of their faith is the crucifixion. But for the Romans, it's a complete non-event. It doesn't even rate a footnote in their histories. Yet out of this clash of perspectives comes the very same result. The Roman Empire becomes Christian. What has always fascinated me is why this epic story has the same outcome, but two often contradictory accounts. So now, I want to know what really happened. How does he become this? This is Perpetua, one of the most significant saints in Christianity. In no small part because of what happened to her around 1800 years ago, here in the Roman arena, where she is whipped, tortured by animals, and finally put to death. All for one reason. She is a Christian. The Christian tradition contains many tales of saints who were martyred by Rome. Horrific tortures, attacks by lions and other exotic beasts, state persecution on an almost military scale. It's a big part of the Christian story. But when I think about it, the Romans could be very violent, but killing simply for your religious beliefs? It doesn't sound like a very Roman thing to do, because the Romans are traditionally fairly tolerant of other religions. In fact, actually, if you ask a specialist about the level of Christian persecution at the hands of the Romans, they all tend to say a similar thing.
Was it illegal to be a Christian? The answer seems to be no.
There is no widespread witch hunt against the Christians.
The truth is, most Christians led their lives and died without any kind of molestation from the Roman authorities. More Christians have been killed in the last 50 years than were killed in the first 3 centuries of the Roman Empire.
So is the story behind their persecution anything more than a good old propaganda campaign by the Christians? It is around 112 AD. An important letter is on a 1,000-mile journey across the empire.
In Bithynia, in modern-day Turkey, the Roman local governor Pliny writes a letter to his boss, the Emperor Trajan, in which he asks his advice about how to deal with a relatively new cult in his province, the Christians.
The emperor pens his reply, and the fate of its Christians begins a journey back to Pliny in Bithynia. In his letter, Trajan tells him that unless they're breaking specific laws, Christians are not to be hunted down.
The Emperor Trajan takes a pragmatic approach to the young cult. As long as they keep within the boundaries and conventions of the Roman Empire and what it is to be Roman, they can pretty much do as they please. Trajan even gives them increased legal protection by banning anonymous accusations against them.
This sounds to me like the Romans are being pretty open-minded. And he goes on to say more.
Trajan instructs Pliny that only when Christians are officially brought before him for breaking the law should Pliny do anything about it.
Not much evidence yet for the gruesome extent of martyrdom the later church historians focus on so intently. So where is the point of conflict? It can't have been made up out of whole cloth. Clearly something is going on. Trajan goes on to say, even if they do break the law,
those who are prepared to swear an oath to the traditional Roman gods should be released.
Finally, there it is, tucked away in the letter. Trajan tells Pliny that if they produce proof they're not Christian, they are not to be prosecuted. And just like the small print in a rental car agreement, the devil is in the detail. Because the proof Trajan wants is for them to venerate the traditional Roman gods in the time-honored way. Something the Christians are abjectly against. Sacrifice. Often, in public, and very bloody.
For Christians, the sacrifice of Jesus, that degrading death as the lowest of the low, was the ultimate blood sacrifice. Right from the inception of the movement, blood sacrifice was not to be part of it.
Sacrifice is transactional. You give a gift to the god, in this case, burnt bits of a freshly killed cow, and you hope to get favor in return. But Christians believe Jesus gave his life for the eternal forgiveness of our sins in return. It's the ultimate transaction. So Jesus creates a new deal, a new covenant between man and God. His horrific and agonizing death on the cross becomes the ultimate and overriding sacrifice, negating the need for any other. Once your own Messiah has been sacrificed, sacrificing anything else, including animals, is a deal breaker. And this applies right across the empire, from its furthest provinces into the heart of Rome itself. I'm headed downtown to locate one of Rome's key landmarks. A monument built by Emperor Trajan, the same one who told Pliny not to persecute the Christians on his return from a victorious military campaign.
As is usual for emperors, Trajan is not shy when publicizing his victories. Behind me is Trajan's column, and this column tells the story of his campaigns in Dacia, modern-day Romania.
It is one of the best pictorial records we have of second-century military campaigns. The trouble is, I'm down here, and this best pictorial record is all the way up there. To analyze the images on the column more easily, we have to come across town, to the Museum of Roman Civilization. In the early 1860s, Napoleon III instigated a plan to make plaster casts of all the images on the column, resulting in the 125 casts we see here today. And on 9 of these panels, we see scenes of sacrifice, like this one here, in which a bull has just been slaughtered on the altar on behalf of the Emperor Trajan. This cuts to the quick of the Roman world view. Simply put, the Romans believed that the gods oversee every aspect of their lives. The house, the army, construction, farming, government, you name it, at some point in the chain, a god is making it all tick over. And that's not helped by the fact that the gods are fickle and bad-tempered and need regular attention through sacrificing. So in a world where the gods are real, live amongst us, protect us, and are sometimes against us, sacrificing becomes an understandable necessity. It's as real-world and practical as building a wall or planting crops. It matters a lot. Now, Trajan's instruction to Pliny makes sense. Not sacrificing means far more than simply sparing a cow or two. It's antisocial, anti-Roman, and treacherous. You're calling the entire social order into question. So Trajan doesn't care whether the Christians are Christian or not. He simply wants them to honor the gods in the Roman way as well. Not for some religious idea or prejudice, but because that is what being part of the empire means. Roman family values, moral and religious codes, its law and order are not just intrinsically part of Roman society, they are intrinsically part of what it is to be Roman. And when the Christians do not embrace those ideals or values, they fail to embrace what it is to be Roman. Trajan isn't asking the Christians to stop being Christian. He simply wants them to be Roman as well, to keep the system going with an odd sacrifice or two. Which, to anyone whose God hadn't already been sacrificed only 100 years or so earlier, might have been simple enough. For the Romans, it doesn't really seem that big of an ask, and it must have been really hard for them to understand why the Christians saw it as such a big deal. But they do. And as a result of rejecting such an innocuous and everyday part of Roman life, to the Romans, Christians seem to be less and less normal. And suspicion of what the Christians are really all about is only magnified by the fact that they tend to meet in private.
If your neighbors suddenly, abruptly said, no, I have nothing to do with those ceremonies that you practice, I have my own group, and it's a secret group, and I'm not going to tell you about it. I mean, that aroused a great deal of fear.
In fact, for some, secret meetings of any kind are to be feared. That certainly is the case with the Emperor Trajan. Here's his thinking. The Roman Empire is a big place, comprised of many different nationalities under the control of Rome, but often against their will. And, so the imperial ruler suspects, many of their subjects would like to go back to being not Roman again. In short, to foment revolution. But you can't easily get a conspiracy off the ground unless you can organize. And so, for the ruler, the math seems simple. Outlaw secret meetings, and you reduce the chance of people organizing themselves, perhaps even plotting to kill you. There's a great case study of how serious this all is. The ruling goes not just for Christians, but for all groups, even ones that seem purely functional, like firefighters, which in the Roman Empire must surely seem a force for community well-being. Summers in the Eastern Mediterranean are hot and dry, and material easily flammable. Houses are made of sunburnt brick, straw, wood, and they can burn down in minutes. And it only takes the slightest breeze for the flames to leap from building to building, and for entire settlements to be burnt down. So it is no surprise that Pliny writes to Trajan asking permission to start a fire brigade in case of accident, or indeed arsonists like myself. Now, despite the fact that they're living in a tinderbox, Trajan refuses Pliny's request for a fire brigade. And the reason? Because a fire brigade is a gathering of people. And to Trajan's mind, where there's a gathering of people, there is the chance for political dissent. Now, if he's willing to risk a much larger conflagration than this, there is absolutely no chance that Trajan is going to allow Christians to have their group meetings in private. Despite the underlying distrust or even dislike of these strange creatures called Christians,